This house was built in 1794, and they moved down. You see all the pock marks on the wall where it beat the paint? That was a hailstorm we had last summer. It broke 5 window panes out of the back, but look at the dents the hailstones put in there. I did the foundation for this one out of stone. Greg Talbot, my good friend that worked with me for years, was killed at the plant in an industrial accident 3 years ago. He and I spent 6 months and took this house down in our spare time. This house was up near Siler City. It was about 40 miles from here. And it was actually a grandfather of mine to the 4th great bought it in 1815, and I found out about it through the deed record, deed research. It was on Mama's side of the family. This was a very fancy house. When it was built, it didn't have the porches or the shed rooms. These people were immigrants from up on the Pennsylvania-Delaware border. They moved down here in the 1750s, and they brought this style, this German engineering for building these big houses. They had a huge cooking fireplace. Look at the exposed timbers overhead. They 4x10s. They span 22 feet. Now, this flooring was gone. This thing actually, from its original site, had a cellar under it, and the floor had rotted and fallen into the basement. And we replaced everything underneath, and these boards came from some huge longleafs that Hurricane Fran blew down in 1996. This tree was 258 years old. Very slow growing longleaf. I've collected the ironware and the little chairs and pieces, and this is one of my prized pieces. Look at this cupboard. This dates to about 1800, and it was at an estate auction, and I got there and no one wanted to bid on it. It was so big they couldn't figure out how to move it, and I ended up buying that for $700. But that really is a beautiful piece of furniture. These are the original walls. They beaded this. This was very early stuff. And see, we took this thing down and I stored it for 10 years before we put it back up. And one day Greg and I were working on the house in January, tearing it down, and we spotted snow on the roof over through the woods. And we went over and checked, and there was a cabin falling down, a house and a log cabin, and standing in the corner of this house falling down were these stair steps. Well, a box corner stair, of course it's corner, very tight, and there's a door goes here, and it'll be hinged over here, and the door just goes down to here, and you could seal the downstairs from upstairs so the heat didn't get away from you. So they called it a boxed corner stair. This preceded the time when you had long straight stairs on a center hall where you went straight up a long stair. And that's a loom I was given, and when I got the house there was a loom in this bedroom. I've got it stored in another place. That's a 5 by 13 inch timber, and it's 32.5 feet long. And that was hand hewn and planed, and you can't even see the marks. Look how straight they cut that. That's a peg there where they sort of missed. This was, when I found this house, I couldn't believe it. I knew I was on to something, and I started doing the research, and I bugged the guy for a year, and he finally sold me this house, and it was rotten and about to fall down. And you can see how the termites had damaged it here. They just riddled it, but there was enough timber left that we were able to save it. I numbered everything, then I numbered with chalk. Now I put tags on them and put it back together. This thing is covered in wooden shingles that we made. This is juniper, or Atlantic white cedar. And there was actually trees growing in the swamp behind us here, and when they cut this tract of timber, I was able to buy all those trees, and we cut them into block, and we would quarter them with a wood splitter, and then we split these shingles out, and I covered this whole house. I split out over 6,000 shingles and covered this house. These are the original rafters though, and they're pegged. You see how they're lapped and pegged in the top? Those are the pegs that were in the house. The engineering was amazing. This is one of the few houses in the state built like this. They built this huge rafter. This is called a principal rafter. It's much larger than these. This is a load-bearing wall because this is where the center wall is downstairs. So there's a post here in the middle that supports this ceiling joist all the way to the floor. So they tenon this in, and then it's tenoned in here and here into this to support this. Then this purlin, it's called, runs the full length and is tongued into the rafter at each end, which is larger, and that in turn supports these rafters. You see, they rest on it. But you can see these people were right uptown here. This was a fancy house.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I like to remind people when you think about the age of this thing, when this house and that house were built, George Washington was president of the United States.